One early morning in Kanto region, there were a glacian by the name Frost. He had been walking around throughout the region to find a new home. After he lost his old home that where he has been living since he was very young, and he had been traveling for nearly 2 months to try to find a good home. Every time he found a good place to stay, they were only to be taken by other Pokemons or the were some Pokemons in their area who were very protective of their place of where they lived. Once he found a good place, a small cave where he thought maybe they could stay, but unfortunately for him, it was a home to another group of sand slashes, and they didn't like another Pokemon in their home. So he tried to find them off and managed to do that, and he had been alone since. So every night when he finds somewhere to stay for the night, he either sleeps under some bushes or under a tree or somewhere else where he can stay. He rarely goes into any public areas around human cities without the intention to be caught by any other Pokemon trainers. So every time when he sees a human, he stays away from them. He doesn't want to be caught by anyone. But one day, when he was around a small town by the name Pallet Town, he decided to stay as far as is possible from it, but at the same time stay close to it so he can maybe find some new friends or perhaps even some food. And he actually found a small cave near in the forest nearby the town, and he looked first around to see if there was any Pokemon who lives there. But at first he stayed only a few feet away from the cave, waited and waited to see if any Pokemon arrived to the cave, but no one did. So he claimed that cave as his home. And so for next couple of days afterwards, he made the cave to more like a home, fixed a small bed of leaves and grass, and even fixed some food for himself. And he even trained by himself to try to get him stronger, and even get a few friends of a few Bulbasaurs, Squirtles, and even some Pidgeys who lived in the area. But there were just a few Pokemon that didn't like him, but they respected him because he didn't attack them because of anger. So in that part, they respected him not to attack him. And he even informed them if any Pokemon try to attack them, they can always come to him for ask for help because he would help any Pokemon at any danger that happened. And they would request that. And even at the same time, there were an Umbreon who lived maybe only a few miles away from him, by the name Moon. Moon had been on her own travels as well, but she had been lived around the Panatown for almost her entire life. She had a lot of friends in the area, and she had a lot of food. But one night, there was a big storm that happened, and her home was an old tree stump which she had made as her home. But during the night, when the storm was happening, a big thunder and a big lightning strike struck into her home and it burned to the ground. She managed to get out in time, but she had now lost her only home, and she had no idea where to go. So she had been looking around in Pallet Town for any place to stay. Even she was wanted to stay away from humans, not to be caught Israel either. So, but she had only one friend in town as a friend, a human, and that was Professor Oak. Professor Oak didn't catch any Pokemon there. He even allowed Pokemon to stay at his home for free, for food, for shelter, and he just did that. So she stayed there for a couple of days while traveling around in town, maybe to find some other place to stay. And she made a lot of friends at the Pokemon at Professor Oak's home. But one day she heard a Pidgey by the name Arrow. He told her that there were an glacion in the forest. Moon has never seen a glacier before because she knows that they prefer most stay in the more in colder region or like in the mountains or sort of thing. So she wonders why would a glacier do in this far south and in especially in Palatown area. And the pigeon said that the glacier by the name Frost has been lost his own home, but he had been living so many years, and he decided to move to find somewhere else. And she was very interested, so she asked the Pidgey Arrow where Frost lived. And since Arrow didn't actually have met Frost directly, so he gave her roughly word to find him. So the next day, she went to what she believed but they could where Frost lived. At first, she didn't find any small cave in the area, so she asked around to some Pokemon, like some Bulbasaurs and Squirtles or other Pokemon that she could find, if they knew any Pokemon by the name Frost. And they all knew him. And one Squirtle pointed one direction and said, just go right forward, and after a while you will see a small cave, and you're there. And she did. But when she got there, he wasn't even home. It turns out that Frost had left his home to do some training and even to find some new food. She waited in the area just to see if he would get there. So, but while she was waiting, she was getting hungry. So she decided to leave the area to find some food, and she found a bush with some berries so that she could eat. But what she didn't know, there were a few pigeons and sparrows in the area who didn't like that any Pokemon took their food from them. And she asked if she could have some food, at least a few berries that she could eat. But they refused to have any of her dear food to her. So she tried to leave the area, even had not been taken any of the food, but the sparrow, they attacked her. She tried to fight them off, but there were too many of them. But at the right same time, Glaceon had just returned home when he heard these roughened sounds in the area, and he ran up to see the sparrows attacking this Umbreon. When they saw him, they all stopped. This was a Pokemon that he had promised to keep safe if was any danger. And they asked him if they knew this Umbreon, and he said no. He had never seen this Umbreon before, but he said, just leave her alone and I will take her to my place where she can have some food or when she needs. Just promise me not to attack her again. Is that unclear? And they all just nodded and just left. He took her on his back to his home, and she was unconscious. And she woke up a few hours later, found in a small cave, and he was just sitting there at the opening and saw that he was looking out. And he heard that she was awake, and he walked up to her with some food and asked if she was okay. And she just nodded. She she was speechless. This was the Umbreon, this Glaceon she was looking for. And he was so kind to her. And he asked her why was she doing there? And she explained why she was doing it. And while doing this, they continued to talk and talked and talked for it felt like for hours, but they only talked for maybe 30 minutes. He had told her all his entire story that he was actually from the mountain region in more part of north, and that he wanted to find a new home, and he found this cave in near Palatown where he decided to stay. Even the Umbreon Moon, she told the same thing, except for that her home was burned down by a lightning strike. And even Frost then mentioned that she could stay at his cave because his cave was big enough for both of them. and he could stay there as long as he wanted, so that he could find a new home for her. And she just blushed and said that he didn't have to do that for her, but he said, "I will do that for any Pokemon, especially as cute Umbreon as you are." That made her blush even more. For the next couple of days, both of them were just spending more time together, talking, yet getting to know each other better. And at the same time, Frost tried to find her a good place that she could stay at, but most of the places that she had found were often occupied by other Pokemon, or they were not as safe as they believed to. So they both decided that she could stay with him, and he didn't mind any company. But only a few weeks after she stayed with him, she had fallen in love with Frost. But she hadn't even told him that, because she was afraid that he wouldn't like her back the same way, and that he would kick her out from his home and so decide maybe that he didn't want to have any Pokemon next to him as a partner. So for the next couple of days after that, she found out about her feelings for him. She saw him in the forest, training with a few Bulbasaurs and a Squirtle, and thought that he was so brave, so strong, made her realize she wants to be with him, even that even though with the risk, knowing perhaps know that he would not like her the same feelings back the same as she felt for him. But she wants to tell him. So one evening, after they had been eating their food, they just sit at the entrance to the cave, just sit there in silence. Moon then asked if Frost maybe someday find some Pokemon to perhaps settle down with and had a family. Frost had said that maybe one day he would, but at the moment he didn't know who he would stay with. His first priority in life was to find a home, which he did, and just maybe one day soon, maybe he could find some Pokemon to love with, to stay, to start a family with. But then she realized she had only one chance to maybe tell him. So she did told him about her true feelings for him. And he was stunned. He looked at her and asked if it was true, which he said yes. And he didn't say much. And he didn't say anything. So she went back to her bed and sleep. But the next morning when she woke up, Frost, he wasn't in any cave. And he wasn't even outside. She looked around and tried to find him, but nowhere. No trace of him. And it was like he just disappeared. In fact, Frost had left the cave early in the morning, just when the sun had risen in horizon. He wasn't just left like that, because he went somewhere to find some new food and wanted to clear his mind. There was a small pond, a small lake in the area, so he went there to get some swim and just try to clear his mind. Was after what just recently happened, and he even realized it that he wanted a Pokemon to be with, and he found the one who he wanted to be with. At first, he had no idea if he wanted to stay with the moon or just move somewhere else. But when he realized Moon was the one he loved the most, so he decided after he had taken a swim, he looked around the forest to find some food and some special food. And he then even went to this part of the forest where the pigeon and the sparrows lived and asked if he could have some of their berries, even that they didn't want to share their food with any Pokemon. But since they saw him that and asked if they can handle only a few of the berries, and he promised he would give them some other food of his own back as a return. They all discussed it and allowed to take at least a few other berries, and he took at least 10 berries and went back to home. And at the same time when she woke up, she didn't find Frost. But after looking around for him for maybe 10 minutes, then she saw him walking back with this big leaf in his mouth and just wondered what was he carrying. But then he saw her at the entrance. He put down this big leaf and opened and showed at least 10 red berries. He said this is the berries that she'd wanted to have before, so she had given them to her. She couldn't even believe it, and she asked how did he get this, and that he was got these berries and he would give the others, the pigeons and the sparrows, some food in return, which he later did. And then he even explained to her that she had opened his mind and that he loved her deeply as well. And then he asked her if she wanted to be his mate, his partner in life. Made her blush a lot and just said yes. And from that day, they were like husband and wife. And all the Pokemon in the forest knew that. And they always respected both of them. And even the pigeons and the pigeon sparrows later on actually respected her. Because when they got to know her, they were like the king and queen of the forest, even they wanted not to be treated as royalty. They always promised to protect the forest and help others in need. And only a year later, there was a big storm happened, and a few Pokemons lost their home during the storm. And Glaceon Frost, he was in the forest when the storm happened, and he even brought with some Pichus and a Pikachu and some other small Pokemon with him to his cave where they could stay overnight. And they all agreed that he was a great savior and a great hero. Only a few months after all of this storm has passed and everything has been back to normal, Frost was happy to know that Moon was going to have an egg soon, and he could not be more happier. And after a few months later, when they had the egg, it hatched to a small Eevee girl, but only a few months later, they had another egg, and this time was a small boy. Both both Moon and Frost could not have been more happy to be with each other and even have a small family of their own. Because this was something Frost wanted to have all along. Someone to share his life with and have a small family. And now he had his own family and a partner of his own. And he promised to always to protect the forest and his own family from any danger. And that's how Frost and Moon found a true love and got a family. The end.